There's at least one politician out there who wants to completely disband the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
The ATF does not have the authority to create federal law. Nobody voted for the ATF, though I know a lot of people who would vote against them if they could.
Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Florida, announced that back on January 16th. It's starting to get some news coverage now. Representative Gaetz said that the ATF can't be trusted to maintain Second Amendment rights for American gun owners. And he may actually be right with this one. I believe his bill is H.R. 374, and you can read that bill online. All it says is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is hereby disbanded. That's the entire text of the bill. That's what he wants because, like he said, he doesn't think that the ATF is there to protect the rights of gun owners, which any good law enforcement agency should do. They should be protecting the rights of the citizens. But so he's pushing, in the face of all of this other gun control legislation, he's pushing to disband the ATF. And speaking of the ATF and what they control, we have a super secret giveaway going on right now, but it ends really soon. If you want to enter for your chance to win this long distance hole puncher absolutely free, click the link in the description down below. And now we'll get back to what's happening with the ATF. You got to understand that this guy's bill, this Representative Gaetz from Florida, his bill, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to happen. But it makes the statement and it gets people on the record talking about what's happening over at the ATF. And right now, with especially things like the pistol brace rules, we can't even call them laws because they're rules that were put in place by the ATF. And they're superseding previous rules which said pistol braces were legal. Now they're telling people to take them off or register their guns or something like that.
ATF cannot be trusted to protect our rights to keep and bear arms. There is no timeline in which the ATF, under any administration, would become an ally.
Representative Gaetz makes a really good point that the ATF is overstepping its boundaries in some areas and continually eroding the rights of gun owners rather than protecting the rights of gun owners. Yes, there are people who break laws with guns. Those are not the majority of the people who own guns. And the ATF is making it more and more difficult for legal gun owners to embrace their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for self-defense, for any legal purpose. You can use your guns for any legal purpose, and the government shouldn't have anything to say about that. The government should have something to say about the people who are using guns for illegal purposes. And they should be going after those people regularly, but not putting rules in the way that make it harder and harder and harder for law-abiding citizens to acquire guns, to sell guns, to keep guns in their home, and to use guns at the range. And a lot of that is happening now under the ATF. And their current rules just keep getting more and more convoluted, more and more difficult for all of us law-abiding gun owners to follow, that one day you can be a perfectly good, upstanding citizen, and the next day you're a felon because the ATF changed the rules. And in some cases, they didn't even tell people. That was one of the things we talked about recently. They didn't even tell people about the NFA weapons prohibition that they had up there on their Q&A page that said you couldn't even hand your NFA weapon to someone else while you were at the range. So this kind of stuff, and again, that Q&A has been rescinded. They took that off, but it might be that they're thinking of making that rule change, which then it acts like a law and people can get in trouble for it. So Representative Gaetz has fired a shot over the bow. In the middle of January, he said, let's disband the ATF. And at least he's getting people to start talking about what the ATF is doing, how they're overstepping their boundaries, and how they're making it more and more difficult for law-abiding gun owners to own guns. And that shouldn't be the duty of a government agency. They shouldn't do things to make the application, to make the use of your constitutionally protected rights they shouldn't be making them more difficult. And the ATF is doing that, and Representative Gates makes a good point.
Go. We need to abolish the ATF before they abolish our Second Amendment rights.
Maybe we should consider disbanding the ATF. I'm sure that all the other law enforcement agencies in this country could enforce all of the laws that the ATF needs to enforce to keep guns out of the hands of bad guys. And you got to remember this. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is just that. It is a bureau. That's the epitome of bureaucrats. They weren't elected by anybody. They were appointed. The head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is appointed, and everyone else under there is hired. They're not elected. So they're actually subverting the authority of Congress. Congress should be making the laws, and the executive branch, under which the ATF falls, should be enforcing the laws. But de facto, the ATF is making the laws, but when they introduce these rules and regulations and tax stamps and things like that, they're making the laws. And Congress doesn't have a whole lot of say in that. They can step up and fight and argue about it when they see something happening, but the ATF is just out there, hey, this is a new rule now. That's what's happening, and if you don't follow it, you're going to jail. That's something we don't really need. We need our elected leaders to take control of that. And I'm actually happy Representative Gates put this, put this out into the ether, put this idea out into the ether to let people start talking about controls that need to be placed on government agencies, not just the ATF. It's a true story of self-defense. We interviewed an armed Lyft driver who was carjacked to help answer these questions. Should I carry a gun while driving? And what does a carjacking actually look like? Just click the video next to me to watch this must-see interview.